Joining us now is Hoshang Hasan. He's a Kurdish Syrian journalist. He's working as an editor at the North Press Agency. He's joining us from Qamishli in northern Syria. He's going to be talking to us through a translator. So thank you very much indeed for being with us. The Syrian military appears to be taking more positions held formally by the SDF. What is the SDF likely to do next?
To begin with, thank you for having me. The last chapter of escalation between the interim government of Syria and the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, started when the General Chief Commander of SDF, General Mazloum Abdi, that he would pull out his forces from the east of Aleppo to the eastern bank of the Euphrates. However, this morning, when these forces were about to withdraw, they came under fire from the Syrian government forces. At the same time, they had advanced in other areas. Yesterday, there were reports about the eastern part of Aleppo. Yet, today, we see the Syrian government are speaking of a Raqqa governorate as well as the Tabqa town, and I believe these moves stand in violation of the agreement. The Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, had called upon the international mediators through whom the agreement was made, namely the US officials, be it in the Central Command or the US State Department. They called upon them for help. This is a new wave of escalation until the very important meeting that is taking place as we speak in Erbil, the capital city of Kurdistan province, between Abdi and Trump's envoy to Syria, Tom Barrack, as well as the Kurdish leader Masoud Barzani. As we speak, this meeting is taking place. It is meant to discuss ways to de-escalate between the Syrian government forces and SDF forces.
For the benefit of our viewers, I should mention that the gentleman Abdi that our guest has just mentioned is Mazloum Abdi, the head of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, who is at that meeting in Erbil. I wanted to ask you about what you think the US is going to try to achieve at that meeting in Erbil, if the SDF, as our correspondent was suggesting, seems determined to dig in and have another standoff with the Syrian military.
Let's not fail to remember that since the formation of SDF in 2014, they have been fighting side by side with the US troops against ISIS. With the cooperation and collaboration with the US troops, SDF managed to liberate many of the Syrian areas from the shackles of the terrorist organization ISIS, for example, Deir Az Zor or other areas in Raqqa province. Therefore, I believe the US mediatory role and the other mediation efforts exerted by the US envoys and officials is very important. It is meant to revive the agreement made and signed by Abdi, the leader of SDF, and President Ahmed al-Shara, the Syrian president. This agreement stipulates that the SDF forces will be integrated within the Syrian army. Therefore, I believe this is a very important meeting taking place in Erbil, and from which the main purpose is to revive the March 10th agreement, whereby the SDF forces will be integrated within the Syrian army. Therefore, this will put an end to the vicious cycle of violence to the north and east part of Syria between the two parties.
I want to ask you about the effectiveness, or how confident people are about the effectiveness of this decree that Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa has signed to protect the rights of the Kurdish people. Will that be enough to satisfy the SDF, or are there wider issues that still need to be dealt with and therefore risks the chance that the violence could spread?
Yesterday, the Syrian President Sharaa spoke of the rights of the Kurdish people in Syria. This per se is a very significant move, yet not sufficient. I have spoken to many Kurdish political factions and the wide political spectrum in Syria. They all demand a material guarantee by way of incorporating the same within the Syrian constitution, simply for the reason that any presidential decree might be scrapped at any point of time in future. In addition, many reservations were raised. The Kurdish political factions demanded that the Kurdish language will be recognized as the second official language to Arabic. For example, when the Kurdish members of the parliament were represented in the Syrian parliament, they had sought to take the oath in their own language. Also, after what has taken place in the coastal areas of Syria, as well as the killings that took place in the southern part of Al-Suwaida, the Kurds fear that any advance by the government forces will be dire. That's why they are seeking clear-cut guarantees, and even if the Kurdish forces are integrated within the army, they should remain within this area. The main problem now is the absence of trust and confidence. That's why tangible measures are needed in order to augment and cement mutual confidence between the two parties. Given all that, peace
Sir, I'm going to interrupt you there. I apologize for interrupting you, but I am kind of conscious of the time, and I do want to ask you how concerned Kurdish people would be that the Syrian the push by the Syrian military that we're seeing at the moment might extend into Kurdish territory itself.
I believe all scenarios are open, yet they are directly linked to the outcomes of the ongoing meeting in Erbil. In case of the absence of any agreement, it will open the door for an all-out war between SDF and the Syrian government forces, and this all-out war will not be in the benefit of any Syrian party. All the Syrian people are looking forward to attract foreign investment and rid the country of the negative impacts of the 14-year civil war. We hope that a meeting will bring about an agreement and the March 10th agreement be revived, whereby the SDF forces be integrated within the Syrian army.
Hoshang Hasan, we appreciate you being with us on Al Jazeera. Thank you very much indeed.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.